Welcome to our webinar, 5 Non-Negotiable Web Strategies Every Association Needs in 2022 and Beyond. Excited to have you all here, excited that we're able to talk in January and give you some of the tools that you need moving into the new year regarding your website and your web presence. My name is Chris Bonney. I'm the Director of Client Partnerships here at Yoko CO. I've been working on the web for long over 15 years. Most of that work, quite frankly, has been with associations. It's an industry and a space that I have a great deal of passion for. I've worked at places like Smith Buckland and other web agencies that focus very specifically on the association nonprofit space. So really excited to talk to you guys today. In the end, I'm a trained web strategist. I have held other positions over the years, project management, business development, operations. Only thing I haven't done right, probably for the better, is coding. And with that, you as a non-coder, I'll pass it to you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Ray Van Hilst. I'm Director of Client Results here at Yoko CO. I am lead our strategy team and help our clients get beyond the, hey, wouldn't it be great if, and conversations that happen with their websites and figure out what actually should happen. Like Chris, I've been doing this quite a long time, probably since he and I both had hair, and have about 15, 20 years experience working with associations, the past 10 of which have been building websites for associations and working in this space. So I am an active member of ASAE and have served on the technology and marketing councils and have spoken in a number of the sessions. So love to help people make their websites better. And so you all can leverage the power of your websites to serve your members and make this world a much better place.
What a segue, Ray. Talking just a little bit about Yoko CO, so you not only know something about who we are as people, but where we work. Yoko CO, what we're really about is working with organizations that value the passion and the cause that they're about as equally as they do making a profit. We're all in business, we need to make a profit, but how do we help make this world a better place? And we love being a part of that effort, whatever it is that you as associations are doing, that good work, we love to be a part of it. And as you can tell from Ray's experience in mine, this isn't just a market that we talk to. Associations are who we are and what we're about, and have been for quite a few years. We want to just jump right in and talk about, as he said, we've got 5 strategies for your website that we'd like to talk through and share with you some of our thoughts. Strategy number 1 is what we call the outside in approach. And we're going to get into that a little bit, but a part of each of the strategies that we're going to share, we have a question that is sort of like coming from you to say things like, how can we make simple tweaks that dramatically increase engagement? So what is it on your website today that philosophically you can look at things in a new way, and practically you can go in and make a change or two to what you're doing, maybe on your homepage, for example, to make it more engaging and compelling and persuasive. So with that, what we'd like to do, as promised, is look at an existing site out there in the world, our friends at ACBS. This is our website today. And there's a few things to keep in mind. Number 1, the premise of all of this is that you're working on a CMS, content management system, where your site is being managed, that allows you to make some simple edits, whether that's to the formation or the order of your navigation bar or your hero area or homepage. That's really key to make sure, if that isn't something that you can do, you look for a way to be able to do that moving forward with a new product. But specifically, when we look at a site like this, things to keep in mind. One is, we know people view websites, web pages, home pages, any page, in a few different ways, in a few different patterns. And we know this from eye tracking and a lot of different usability studies. But one of them is in an F-shaped pattern. So you start at the top in the upper left, you move across, you come down a little bit, basically below the hero area, which is that green box here in this case, and across again. So what does that mean? It means that links in your navigation bar that are in the furthest left position should be your most prominent, your most important, and the areas of your site that you expect people to go to the most. Why? Because they'll see it first, they have access to it first, and it's a priority for you to show to them. So as we look at ACBS, what do they have first? Well, home. Well, that's just sending people back to the home page. And we know now a best practice, and has been for a long time, is to click on the logo of in the header that takes us back to home. It's not to say we can't have a home button. Sometimes within mobile settings, things like that make some sense. But obviously, we want that first button to be a little more impactful and meaningful than that. What we have next, though, are some acronyms that are obviously something that means something to the folks at this organization, but they're jargon for the rest of us, and anybody coming to the site that wants to navigate isn't really going to be sure. Now, we understand why this happens. These are programs for them. These are certifications for them. These are important areas of our site. We want people to have access to it no matter where they go on the site. That's why it's in the nav bar. But nav bars have a different role, and that is, and as well as organizing content into, chunks of content with a label that says, hey, this content is about X. That's one thing. But the other role is about the user journey, and how can we draw people into the site, not just into like, hey, here's a bunch of content about X, but hey, we know you're here to do this thing, renew, register, attend, and how can we guide you no matter where you're at on the site through that nav bar with some sort of navigational link that is informative, action-based, that pulls people through the site to perform the action that you're looking for. So we've got a few things to keep in mind here. F-shaped pattern, what does that look like? Simply rearranging some nav bar buttons or links on your site can help. That's a quick fix here based on what we're talking about with the F-shaped pattern. Keeping jargon out of the navigation, is another takeaway here. But Ray, do you want to talk about what we mean by outside in? Because that's what this whole strategy is about.
Yeah, so the thing to keep in mind when someone comes to a website is that they're coming to solve their issues and have their questions for what they're coming in to do. And they don't really, at the end of the day, don't care which department it looks like. As I like to tell clients, your organization, your org chart of where people are staffed and what departments they sit in your organization, that is not a website navigation structure. It's based on what people are coming in to do. So a really good example of how we've brought this to life is, Chris, if you want to look at the next slide, is the design we recently launched for the National Association of Healthcare Quality. So a few things that we've done within this layout is making sure that we're focused on the people that are coming in and what they're looking for. So the navigation is based off of the individuals. So the NHQ deals with healthcare quality in hospitals and settings out there. There's a certification, the CPHQ, that healthcare professionals get as they're working on healthcare quality. Everyone, and raise your hand if you don't want better healthcare. And so this is very important work that's happening. And there are two core people that come to the site: individuals that want to make this a career or in their career that are healthcare quality professionals, or organizations, health systems themselves that are looking to improve their quality. So in that outside in approach, the navigation recognizes right away at the top with that navigation up there. You'll also notice that we've taken the about the organization out of the navigation. That's kind of, as Chris likes to say, that's a one and done type navigation. You come to look for that information maybe once or twice a year. It doesn't need to hold that real estate. Let's make sure that the real estate and the navigation is really focused on the people that are coming in. And then the next element we do, and the heat mapping studies show that while we have this beautiful image that introduces what the organization is about with this healthcare quality professional, we've got her image there. Return users skip right over that. We've been trained that this is just, it's an image, it's a nice to do. We're going to skip over that. And where the eye lands is in that first jump below that. And we've prioritized in there for people to prepare for the exam. So this is an exam that people need to take in order to get in, or they have other resources. So we're guiding people through this journey in the navigation that way and make it easy for them to scan and click quickly. And reality is, when you think about your homepage, for them to get off of the homepage quickly. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But this is, you can kind of see how this has come to life. And if you want to see this site in real life, go to nahq.org and you can pull it up and experience it there.
Yeah, awesome, Ray. Thank you. So to recap, sort of where we're at with strategy 1, got a lot to cover, so we want to get right on to strategy 2. But to recap where we're at with strategy 1, the takeaways for you is to think about this outside-in approach, which is it's about the user. It's not having nav links that represent the sections or the departments of your organization. As we talked about, the F-shaped pattern, where is the placement of the navigational links, one and done for things like About Us. And we didn't talk about it, but the hero area, which is that area where those visuals are right below the nav bar, that branded marketing area, campaign area, hero area it's called. Very common to have sliding images there. If you go to the ACBS site, you'll see some animation happening there. But if you go to NAHQ, you'll see there isn't. It's static. And that's what we know per Ray's, people skip below that anyway. So while we have that sort of debate internally of what goes on the homepage and let's put it in the slider, best practice today is to keep that static, keep it branded very well, and have the messaging be very clear throughout. Strategy 2, Ray just talked about it, rethink your homepage. What does that mean exactly? Well, what page could possibly be more important than our homepage? Which, I'm just teeing it up for you there, Ray.
So yeah,
right.
Exactly. As I like to tell people, for all the meetings we're going to have about the homepage, for every time you have to sit down with your executive director and show it to the committee, the reality is your homepage is actually your least important page of the site. And if we're doing things right, it should be the least viewed page in the site. So you might be saying to yourself, well, what is? The reality is every other page of your site becomes the most important page. So as I like to say, treat those subpages as important as your home pages. And a really good example that we have is from our client, the EMDR International Association. EMDR is a type of therapy that is done. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It's very effective in treating people dealing with trauma. And it's actually been in the press lately. Sandra Bullock was talking about it. Prince Harry mentioned it. And I just literally grabbed this shot yesterday out of Google Analytics, and you can see that the page that is about EMDR therapy has more first views of the site than the home page. So particularly if you're doing if you are in an industry where people are Googling and learning about you and your subject matter expertise, that's interior page is going to be really effective, and you need to make sure that those pages are treated as importantly as your homepage. And you can see that with the heat map that we pulled of the site, so that you can see how people have clicked, they've gone through the heat mapping information within there. This happens on a number of our other sites. We work with the American Association of Endodontists. Their patient site, if you go into incognito mode and Google what is a root canal, they will be at the #1 slot for that. So we want to make sure that these landing pages are really important and taking a look at that. And a good way to know that this is happening is look at your landing pages data in Google Analytics. If the home page is the #1 viewed page, that means that's great. You're getting lots of branded search, but look for those subject matter pages, be them on subject matter, content you have, or also events and things like that. Someone might Google the name of your organization and the event.
Exactly. And Ray, I think it's fair to say too, there's a way, the other term at play here is landing page. And it's one thing to say, yes, be a subject matter expert about a page, but make sure those pages that are around important topics, maybe products, maybe around particular audiences, and we're going to look at that in a minute, that you want to reach out to, treat those specialty pages as if they are a home page in their own right. So to Ray's point, make sure they're SEO optimized, make sure there's imagery, make sure it's compelling copy, etc. And use those links to direct people as a gateway into your site because we already know X about them. They are this, so let's direct them, as you said, through the landing page. The other thing that I think is just worth mentioning, Ray, about homepages is that they tend to be this centrist approach. We're trying to please everybody internally at the organization to make sure they're represented on the homepage, and also that every constituent possible from the media up and down is represented there, and they can find what they're looking for. But I think what this strategy does, if you can go back to your team and say, look, maybe the homepage isn't what we think it is, let's decide what it is, but it takes the pressure off. Everybody's going to get their place on the site and get their moment, and it's going to be better than trying to box it out, if you will, not literally like in boxes on a homepage for particular areas of your organization.
Right, and that really starts with what that does from a governance perspective is enable you to say, okay, for this area and this user is coming in, we can have specific landing pages for that usage, and we can cater towards that. And you can start to narrow and segment your audience down a little bit and your users down a little bit better that way.
So to recap, centrist approach pleases no one. I think there's probably folks on this call that can greatly relate to that. And sometimes it's hard to have that conversation internally. And to that we say, bring in your web agency and let them or let us talk to them and explain how those kind of things work. Again, as we said, it shouldn't be the only gateway. There are landing pages. SEO cannot be stressed enough for those specialty pages. And as we said, it takes the pressure off. All that attention and thought work that goes into the homepage just kind of eases things up a little bit. Jumping into strategy 3, we're clipping right along here. Be inclusive and accessible. And I just can't stress how important that is. I'm sure we're all having conversations about these things internally. They obviously also apply to the web. And there's quite a few different ways that these things can happen. The question that we feel is probably pertinent here is, as an association, we want to be inclusive. So there's one aspect of it, but we also don't know, what we don't know basically about accessibility and what that means for disabled, for even dyslexic or colorblind people have needs for the web and are considered part of the spectrum of folks that we need to create a website specifically for. So there's a lot to unpack there. We could have an entire webinar about, this topic alone, but some takeaways for where we're at today from inclusion. A lot of that can happen through imagery, okay? We want to, as a general rule, try to stay away from stock imagery that's just too generic and probably overused and could be found in other places on the web, therefore, very much so diluting, your brand and the experience there. In this case, for our clients, IASP, in the top box, these aren't the same web page. These are excerpts from 2 separate pages. In the top box, there are pictures of actual members, PhDs, okay? There's a place for you. One of the things we like to say a lot is when people come to your site, members or non-members, can they see themselves in the site? Now, not literally, not so Kai and Kevin come here and go, oh my God, I literally see myself here. And that helps. But people like me, words that resonate with me. Even the color schemes are something that, help me feel welcome and help me feel like I'm in the right place. As you look below, that second set of images is right off the homepage. And, while we love to have people take special custom shots of their members or otherwise for their homepage, there is a way to do high quality stock imagery, to license it in a way that makes it yours. But it's such a great way to be expressive. And as you look, and this is an organization for pain management. So as we look at these people's faces, we have diversity, we have inclusion as a part of it, but aren't they interesting expressions even on the faces of these folks? And can't you see how this organization is going to help and affect folks just like them and just like you? Okay.
Yeah.
So
I
go
think
ahead.
a bit of background to expand on this. So if you want to check out the site, it's isp-pain.org. ISP is a global organization representing pain researchers, but also clinicians. So there are PhDs, there are nurses, even individual patients that might be advocates for pain. So one of the things we wanted to make sure we're doing in this design is make sure that we show that multidisciplinary and global approach. It's kind of easy if you're an organization like, to just go grab photos of Americans, but we want to make sure, and that may, that sounds kind of weird. I don't want all Americans, but I want make sure we have some Europeans. If you have like city scenes from London or Australia or Japan, things like that speak to that global audience. And from the perspective of diversity as well, I mean, almost every client we're talking to right now, they're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion within their sites. So how can you build that in and tell those member stories and highlight that diversity and the inclusion that you bring as you grow within your audience? Your website is that first vehicle that someone is going to take a look at and say, is this a place for me? And there's an opportunity for them to see that, to see themselves reflected in the site and then decide to join.
It's a great point, Ray. And just to expound a little bit on the international aspect, we know organizations that also use the IP address of the visitor to present different visuals and graphics based on what corner of the world they may be coming from. So for the international organizations out there, there are ways to be very inclusive and very specific culturally to how your content is presented, not just about language translation, but across, as Ray said, imagery of cities, towns, et cetera, in specific geographical areas. It's highly impactful. You'll see on this site too, this IMA right in their nav bar here. Okay, so again, how can we reach even more people in an effective way through that nav bar? So when you tap on it here, this is an entire sub mega nav that pops up for the end user to say, who are you? What do you do in this industry? Where's your place? Because we have something for you. So obviously it's a very audience-based navigation. And Ray, I know you have sort of some philosophies around the pluses and minuses of this audience-based approach.
I do, just a few tightly held beliefs around that. But what this does is, the reality is, in looking at content, users of different types might be looking for the same content, and they don't necessarily know what they're looking for. I used the example with a client last week. If you are a DIYer or a contractor looking for a table saw or looking for a drill, when you walk in the same door at Home Depot or Lowe's and you go to the power tool section, there's not a homeowner power tool section and a contractor power tool section. They're just all there, and you pick at that point of entry. But you might walk past a display on the way to the section that says, hey, for homeowners, here's the curated list of tools we think you should have. And they're still in the same section, right? Or it might be a different mailing. So this is an opportunity with that audience-based navigation to say, hey, all the resources are here as you can find them, but based on your audience, like, this is a curated list of things that you might be most interested in, and we can make that navigation a little bit easier for you to get to that. It's a little bit, it's a good way to call out those differences and recognize them, but not necessarily silo your content into that layout and that type of content structure.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It's so true. And it's a balancing act, right? I mean, it isn't just about a sitemap and going, like I said before, like, let's chunk out our information into these, buckets. No, I mean, this is about the user journey. And then as that user's taking the journey, what are the guideposts that we're presenting them? Based on, it could be any contextual thing. Are you on a mobile device? Is it midnight or 2 a.m. or 7 a.m.? Where are you in your job? Where are you sitting literally at that time as a user? All of those are elements of that experience.
Yeah, an interesting thing that we're developing right now for another client. We're working with a nonprofit that provides emergency financial assistance to certain county residents in an area. And we know from the analytics that the users of the people coming to this nonprofit for assistance are predominantly on a mobile device. So in our development phase, we are including a device detection that says, hey, if you're looking at this view on the mobile device, chances are good you're probably coming to us for assistance as opposed to wanting to make a donation. Because if you're working in a foundation trying to make a donation, you're going to be at work on your laptop. So we are programming a pop-up that says, are you looking for assistance? If so, please click here, and we can get them straight to that feature. So that's a way to be inclusive and make that experience easier for the user.
We know a lot about a person when they're coming to the site. I mean, we do. And in this case, we know they're coming on a mobile device. So let's show them something that we probably feel is very contextual to them that the desktop wouldn't necessarily show. It's huge. And it's a good segue into just, there's one thing about, assuming the user journey and being inclusive to everyone that's coming to the site. So it isn't a checkbox. It's a legitimate aspect of what you do philosophically in your bones as you build websites today. It isn't, like I said, just something we say, hey, we need to make sure we cross that off the to-do list. No, it needs to be inherent in all we do. And we're going to talk in a minute a little more about how to create content, and you'll see what we mean. We'll give you examples of how to instill that more in what you do. But accessibility is about making sure that somebody that comes with a screen reader to your site can navigate it effectively. That means things like your images have alt tags, ALT, not to get out in the weeds, but as marketing minded folks and anyone that manages the web today, it's one of those terms we should probably know. And that's that little pop-up when you mouse over an image, that little bar that kind of says what the name of the image is. Screen readers can't show somebody with vision impairment that image, so they read to them what that alt tag says. So think about your site right now, go mouse over. Do you even have them? And if you do, are they descriptive, relevant, and contextual to that page as to what that image is? So you're not losing somebody that's trying to navigate your site through audio and no visual at all. So that's just one simple quick tip toward accessibility. I will say too, and we'll show you here in a minute some places to go do more research, but accessibility has a couple components to it. One is, hey, we as an organization are very aware of accessibility. We want it to be as accessible and usable by anyone with a disability as it can be. And we're going to have our web agency create our new site to achieve that. Now, that's perfect and great and more than enough. But what can happen over time? People that are managing these pages within the organization, just time of adding pages, etc. You might miss an alt tag here. You might not follow this protocol for accessibility here. And over time, your site falls a little more out of compliance. Well, the good news is that's probably enough and okay to avoid what? Well, to avoid what you're looking at on the screen here. And it's not meant to scare anybody. It's just meant to open the conversation that says there are, a whole section, a whole vertical within the legal world that is out there saying, how can we make sure that companies and organizations are compliant so that those with disabilities are, can navigate? You hear about the ADA compliance. That's a factor of things that happen on the web. There's another acronym you should know that we'll show it visually here in a minute, but it's WCAG. That's actually the list and set of compliance requirements for your website to be considered compliant. So there's a lot to know, but do know this. This is a real thing. Again, not meant to scare anybody, but the last thing you want your organization getting is a letter saying your site doesn't look compliant, and that is going to be a problem for you because then you're scrambling, and that's not where you want to be. Okay. The other thing too is once someone like Yoko CO makes your site compliant at launch, we also help you include an accessibility statement. Now you have a privacy policy on your the footer of your website. Well, now we have accessibility statements that say, hey, we built this site to be accessible. We're doing the best we can each and every day. So if you have a problem with anything that's happening on the site, please let us know. And Ray, isn't it fair to say that really takes the pressure off when it comes to any sort of legal ramification?
It really does. And we've actually had clients say that, like, hey, we'd much rather get the email of like, hey, this page isn't working for me. Can you take a look at it, rather than get a cease and desist or lost letter from a lawyer. And at least it shows that you're doing the best you can, and that you're at least aware of the issues. So it's a good technique to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. So to sort of recap inclusion and accessibility, people need to see themselves in your site. Okay. No stock imagery is probably a long way to go because it's pretty tough, but you want it to be high quality, licensed imagery that you're not going to find at a million other websites. And that helps you humanize the site, whether that has to do with the cultural international aspect of your site or with the paying people to say, we get who you are. We understand there's a wide spectrum of feelings that you have with chronic pain or something similar and what it does to your life. And we want to present that so that you feel comfortable with where you're at. We talked about the different degrees of accessibility. To take that to the furthest extent, here you can see WCAG or WCAG. There, you can Google that, and there's more than enough information to take in. That's a rabbit hole for you. But there are third-party services like you see here, Accessibility or Audio Eye. You can Google them and find them. I think they both might be .coms. But these are third-party products that help you keep your site fully compliant 24/7. Of course, you pay for that. But if your organization is, very serious about making sure that, again, this isn't a checkbox, but about who you are as an organization, these are two great places to start. And we're on to strategy 4, Ray.
Purposeful content.
Purposeful content.
Yeah, you remember how I said earlier that when someone comes to a website, they're not coming to learn about you, they're coming to solve their problems. They're coming to solve their needs. I have a question, I have a project, I'm facing a situation. The example I used earlier is I want to learn about EMDR therapy, or my dentist just said I need a root canal, or I need training for my job. And the way to do this is to be purposeful and intentional about your content. Don't just look at the things you have. And a lot of organizations do that. They're like, oh yeah, we do meetings. Here's my meeting section. And we have advocacy. We have the advocacy section. That's the things you have and the things you do. But let's start by going through and saying, looking from those users, what are they coming to the site? What are they coming in to do? And a good model that we have that we use at Yoko CO is what we call a content needs matrix. And this is an example that we have one up on the screen. And basically, once you define who your users are, as why they're coming in, what they're looking to do, stop and ask yourself, what are the questions this person would have of my organization? What are the things they would need? And go ahead and document them. It'd be interesting to open this up and get it into a big old spreadsheet and organize it and throw it out and put it out to your various departments, your members, get you some volunteers. And it might be like, yeah, there's the industry stuff. How much is membership? When's the annual meeting? Who do I contact about my certification? But then there might be the things of like, how do I do XYZ? What are the latest trends that I need to know of what it is that your organization does? How is the pandemic affecting my industry? And then there can be different levels of that content, and it's an opportunity to map that out. And we map content to what we call a conversation spectrum. The levels of the conversation spectrum are oblivious, curious, intrigued, invested, and converted. And we add that into our column as we go through and do that. So using my root canal example earlier is, dentist says, oh man, you need a root canal. Well, what is a root canal? That's, it's a certain type of dental procedure. Can my dentist do it? Your dentist can, but in all due respect, go to an endodontist. They have special training. So why would I go to an endodontist? What's the difference? How do I find an endodontist? What is that visit like? I'm heading down that conversation. And ultimately, in AE's case, how how do I find an endodontist? Oh yes, AAE has a find an endodontist directory on their site. It's AAE.org/find my endodontist, I think, that pulls that in. But that's a way to make sure that you have content that answers the users of where they are in the journey. And then the next step is to go through and map that out to your personas. And you might say to yourself, as you go through that, wow, these people are asking a lot of questions about my organization that I don't have. Well, that's great. That gives you a roadmap to develop content in the future, but enables you to be intentional around the content that meets those users' needs, addresses them, is overly helpful, and turns them into members and customers as they go through that journey.
Yeah, it's great stuff, Ray. I just think the conversational spectrum and the idea that every page needs a purpose, every page should be answering a question or two.
Mhm.
And then how does that map to the needs of the users? I just think, that's a mapping, that's a formula, that's something to really be able to sink your teeth into. And I mean, do you feel like you have to do that with, I have 8,000 pages on my website and 400 PDFs. Like, how do you, right? I mean, when we work with clients, how do you determine how many pages need to answer a question, so to speak?
Yeah, so we start by looking at that journey of how people are coming in, how many pages should be answering that question, and then what's the path to get someone to it. And
Yeah.
then the most important thing is also then link off to other things. So you might be looking at
Mhm.
a topic, for example, I'll go back to EMDR therapy. Can EMDR therapy be used to treat depression or anxiety? Well, that's a separate page on the process of what is EMDR therapy. So you might have
Yeah.
have a page that says EMDR therapy is effective in treatment of these types of things. And then as time allows, you could then have additional articles and additional content. Actually, they just did I was looking at their analytics the other day, and they did an EMDR therapy and eating disorders blog post, an article. It was very effective. So they
Mm-hmm.
so you can start to build on that and get a little deeper as you have deeper content.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's, the recap on better content, there's so much to talk about. One thing we didn't really talk much about is just editing and understanding how to write for the web. Your web agency should be offering you some writing for the web course. You could Google it. There's a lot of options, but it's something that we include in our training with our clients. And you can see how it's such a complement to this, because now we need 6 new pages to answer those 6 questions. How do we do that? There are ways to write for the web. It's actually a great segue into our next strategy as well. But like we said, we have purpose, we have to answer a question, and it needs to map to an audience. And I think if you just wrap your head around that and nothing else, if you're working like a site map or doing an audit on your website internally, we're fine with that. It's a really good idea, but what kind of a layer does this add to that exercise? It's not just about, hey, where does all the like content go together and what should we call it? This is a whole nother dimension, but you bring this to your team and you're going to see the light bulbs go off. Now, the 5th strategy is just simply this, and that's something you hear web agencies talk a lot about, but they should, and we should be talking more about it in all that we do on the web. And it's not just saying, how do we write good for the web? Like, make sure you have bullet points, make sure you don't have long, walls of copy. Okay, that's good advice, but what should those words be? You know what I mean? It's different to just have some words and to have some words with purpose. So how do we convert users? Because in the end, if we're answering a question or we're looking for a call to action, those words, complemented by design, are going to compel someone to act, to persuade, not manipulate, to persuade people for their best interest to do the next thing you want them to. Okay. So what can happen? These are my friends at BSCAI. I know the executive director. He's fine with me pointing them out as something that maybe they should do a little differently. But read this boxed out area, regardless of, this is trying to pull somebody into the organization. Our programs and services will help you excel in today's competitive marketplace while enhancing your leadership skills, positioning you and your company for continued success. I mean, sounds great. I'm not moved. I'm just not moved. So what question are we answering? What action do we want people to take? And who cares if it's formatted correctly for the web, if the words aren't compelling, if the words aren't pulling the user toward where you want them to go? It doesn't matter. Let's drive a bunch of traffic to this landing page. Yoko said landing pages are the way to go. We did it, and oh my gosh, the traffic's incredible. And on this landing page, we want people to do something, but they don't do it. I'm not sure what's wrong. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's probably in your copy. It might even be in the call to action button. A word like submit, while you see it everywhere, not only is it not compelling, but it connotates negativity. Who wants to give in and submit something to somebody? They don't. Does somebody want to get something though? I sure do. How about get access now? That makes a lot more sense and is way more attractive emotionally. A person doesn't know when they see the word submit on a button that it's hitting them negatively, but it sure is. Okay, so it goes pretty deep when it comes to how we do copy. So what can we do? How do we make this better? How do we get away from that sort of Markami copy that we just read? There are, for those copywriters or familiar with copywriting out there in the world, there's a ton of formulas. But if you're a marketer and you're not familiar with copywriting formulas and you tend to lean into perfectly formed sentences that sound great with excellent words but aren't compelling, here's a formula that you can use, okay? It can be in a tweet, 4 lines of a tweet. It could be in a 4,000 page or word report of some kind, and distributed. Each of these points are covered by a paragraph or page. Or it could be on a landing page where, the first sections of each page cover each aspect of this formula. So how does it work? State the problem. I've pulled you in, haven't I? If I told you, your problem is probably this, right? Here's what we know for sure your problem is. And doesn't it suck when this happens too? Well, you kind of got me, because I'm feeling an emotion being evoked, and I'm thinking to myself, you kind of get me, and I like that, and I'm going to continue reading. What's the purpose of every word in a sentence? To get you to read the next word. What's the purpose of every sentence? To get you the next sentence. What's the purpose of every web page? To get you to the next web page. And you need to think about it that way. So we've agitated the problem, and now I'm feeling a little bit of, agita, if you will. But what's the solution? Here's the solution that we happen to offer as an organization. And once you take the solution, here's the outcome that you'll have, and won't that feel good? So we took it upon ourselves to this is a rough draft of a reworking for BSCAI, but this is real simple to do. I mean, you can take something that's Markami and you're like, I know what you're trying to say, but why don't we throw this formula in there? COVID, staffing shortage, supply chain issues. Well, every person that's at a BSCAI, they are building service contractors, cleaning services, etc. They feel COVID and staffing and supply chain. How could they not? Okay. Even the most experienced person, you probably are that person, feels a little heartburn, and you might have some sleepless nights. Okay, Jesus, you're right. I'm with you now. Worse yet, agitate. Your customers are having the same issues, aren't they? And that's affecting your bottom line. So they're calling you, you're getting that email going, hey, I need to pause my services for a minute. Now this person's like, that just happened to me. Oh my God, like you're in my brain right now. BSCAI members make up peer-to-peer community of business leaders just like you. Oh, that's interesting. Who are ready to share their knowledge and help you navigate these tricky times. That's what you're going to get. Now, wouldn't it be nice to feel confident again the way you do business? Sure would be. Have someone tell you what worked for them instead of having to figure it out for yourself. Love that idea. Sounds like a time saver. So check out what problems we can solve for you today. Link. See the difference? It's just wildly dramatic. So as you're formulating copy on a homepage, but more importantly, a landing page or the renewal page, this is a simple formula that you can absolutely follow. Now, the other aspect, and Ray, I know you want to talk a little bit about this from the Oceanic Society, is design. Copy's one thing, needs to be readable and follow web best practices, but how does design also pull the person in as a complement, to those words?
Yeah, and this is so this is our client, the Oceanic Society, oceanicsociety.org, and they have a great program. They do conservation programs, And they have a great program that raises funds where you can adopt a dolphin or adopt a whale or a sea turtle, et cetera. And the money goes back out to their programs. So, I mean, the need is, and the people that are coming into the site are people that care about the oceans and want to help protect it. So we've got that problem. The solution in terms of giving that gift. But the other thing we've done is add a message hierarchy within here. So the reality is, the adopt a species is nice, but that's kind of, and there, the key thing that pops out of this is to give a gift that will help protect our ocean wildlife worldwide. Like, that's the key message. And then the follow up from that is not actually that paragraph below, but it's your animal adoption provides needed support to our research and conservation programs. This is what you're going to get out of that. And then we guide you into your options around adopting a whale, dolphin, or a sea turtle. Really effective program for them. And by having that messaging hierarchy and that message priority, you're able to guide the user's eye as they scan over the page. Having everything in the same font and the same level, or making everything bold, at that point, it just loses prominence. And the reality is, because people don't read, on the average web user reads, if we're lucky, 28% of the words on the page. So let's pick those 28% of the words that they're going to read and make sure that they matter and that they drive results for us.
Yep. Absolutely awesome. Recapping strategy 5, words that evoke. I need to feel something, or you're just noise to me, is really the bottom line. Is it web friendly? How does design serve as a complement? Look at the Oceanic Society. Go to that site, Oceanic Society. It's gorgeous, and pulls you in every possible way. And then we talked about PESO, problem, agitate, solution, outcome, as a simple formula. And if you want to dive deeper and that starts to work and you want to turn it into PESOP, I'll let you figure out what that P's for on your own. Feel free. These are great formulas to use. So that concludes our 5 strategies for today. If you want to chat a question, happy to talk it through. Here's Ray's email and mine. Feel free to reach out. yokoco.com is where we're at.